Hey guys, Brian Salter here, and I thought I'd give you a little peek of what it's like to live on an island. So right now it is October 9th or 10th, I don't know, it's Friday. And tomorrow, Saturday, we're supposed to have a nor'easter hit. A nor'easter is when the wind's out of the northeast and blows really, really hard. I've probably been through about 50 of them. Anyways, we're having king tides this week, which means the moon is really close to us. So I thought I'd give you a sample. This was bone dry 15 minutes ago. And now, and within 15 minutes, you can see the water coming up. So this is the parking lot at my cousin's restaurant, the Crab Shack in Salter Path. By the way, it's the best seafood on the planet. Encourage you to come out and eat there. Crab Shack. We are closing October 26th for the year, and they open back up next year. I'll show you the back here. A day in the life of living on an island and dealing with the ocean. So tomorrow the wind will be about 60 miles an hour, and we are just starting high tide now, so the water's going to be up against the building here. It can be rough at times, guys. So, anyways, that's when I built my new shop. Let me get a shot of this. Ooh, big wave. Anyway, when I built my new shop, I really put a lot of effort into waterproofing it. My walls are double studded. The concrete is the strongest I could buy. I doubled my footer size. I did everything you could possibly do. I plywooded the inside and out. I have 15 inches of insulation in the walls, caulked everything. So my roof is rated at 160 mile an hour. So, you know, if the Lord wants to take it, obviously he can. But it's going to take a heck of a blow to tear my new shop down or to get water intrusion. I mean, I went out of my way. So I won't be doing another one, I can tell you that. This is shop number 3 in 30 years, and it has exhausted me mentally, physically, and financially. So I will not be doing another shop if something happens to this one. Anyhow, I just live literally about 300 yards from here. So we're gonna go see what's going on at my house. Hang tight. Yeah, so this is about 4 inches deep. I had to walk all the way here just to get to the car that I'm working on, which is that Toyota right there. Because the water's so deep, it'd be above my ankle. And I don't feel like getting my socks wet, so I'll get to my car here eventually. Oh, I love this too. All the tourists that come down and they just splash through salt water. That is out of the ocean, y'all. And when you do that, give it 6 months, your car is ruined. If you see a puddle at the beach, don't drive through it. See guys, I'm sorry, but I had to show it. This is what I'm talking about. They're splashing all that salt water up in their frame rails. 'Cause they won't have frame rails in a year. It'll be gone. No frame. Y'all come eat, man. Best seafood you will ever put in your mouth. Alright, I'm almost to my car. Okay, I made it to my car. Excuse me. Oh, if you don't like seafood, that's okay, because their steaks are out of this world. Unlike most seafood places whose steaks are terrible, their steaks are phenomenal. And they have other things besides just seafood, but obviously specialize in seafood. Now we're about to start stop net fishing. And if you don't know what that is, it's a tradition that goes back to my ancestors who founded this place, obviously. And I'll kind of give you an idea of what that's like. But basically with stop net fishing, we take skiffs and we take a net straight off perpendicular from the beach. It depends on the crew, right? But sometimes it'll be a 200 yard straight off, 300 yards straight off, whatever. And then we'll turn up the beach. So we put an anchor line on the corner, put an anchor line at the beginning of the net on the beach, go straight off perpendicular, anchor right there, and then we go straight up the beach parallel to the beach about 200 yards. And basically, as you can imagine, we're fishing for mullets for the roe and obviously the meat too. And the mullet will swim down the beach and get stopped. Now, these are not gill nets to where they get caught in the gill net. These are stop nets. So basically, once we catch them, we'll go out there in the skiff and grab the other end of the net and pull it to the beach with these tractors. And so as we're hauling the net to the beach, you got all these fish jumping around, they pile up, and we'll catch anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 pounds of fish at a time. So we do this every year. I usually keep the tractors going and stuff like that for them. It's a heritage thing, and we have to get the bycatch out, so if everything goes well, you don't really lose a whole lot because they're not gilled, they're not caught, they can still freely swim. And these things are very fresh. And then we'll drive pickup trucks on the beach, and we literally load them in the back of the trucks, pickup truck beds, and they'll be mounded sometimes. And we put a tarp or a net over them and drive to Homer's and get paid for the roe and the fish. A mullet is, now there's two kinds. There's a sea mullet and a jumping mullet. We like the jumping mullet. Jumping mullet is gamey. It's the best fish on the grill you will ever eat. I'm telling you right now. We love ducks and other birds that, I'm not going to tell you what they are because some people don't like you shooting them. But we eat a lot of ducks. We have a saying here in Salter Path, if it flies, it dies. Because we eat everything. My grandmother would cook robins. We'd shoot a bag of robins and she'd cook them. We used to eat yellowhammer woodpeckers and cormorants. Some cormorants are correct. We call them cormorant. Everything. So that's how it was. And then a whole lot of people from out of states coming down here visiting now since COVID happened, and pretty much ruined our heritage. I'll just tell you. It's just a fact. Loons, yeah, they're delicious. Alright, anyways, I'll show you the tractors and we're going to get to the shop. Alright, so here's the tractors and the skiffs we use. We build those skiffs out of plywood, and they're specially built for launching them on the beach. And we have about 5 or 6 tractors right here, and we have another 7 or 8 tractors over in the other yard with about 4 or 5 more skiffs. And like I said, it's usually about between 7 and 10, and we have 3 fishing crews. We'll run up and down the whole island. It's a good time. Alright, I'm back at my house now, and I tell you, the camera doesn't show the waves like your eyeballs see them, let me tell you. Those are about 4-foot swells beating up against my seawall. And like I said, it's about medium tide right now. It's on the way in. You always get storms with the tide either coming in or going out. A lot of times you'll get storms. Anyways, it's probably going to be pretty bad weather. I might get a shot this way. Hang on. So normally there's about 3 foot underneath those docks, and they are completely almost submerged now, and it's only going to get worse. So pretty normal though. Alright, anyways, we'll carry on. A day in the life. You know what? I thought I would do a real quick video on bearing crush while I'm at it, since we're talking about it, and that way you know what we're doing. Pardon me for this interruption. We have a emergency I need to address. Before I go on to the bearing crush video, I had a customer from Australia point this out to me today. And it has to do with the fact that you don't want to hire me to build shelving. Okay? So I had a guy pointed out several weeks ago, my shelving looks horrible. And another guy pointed out today. Let me just tell you what happened. Okay, I got the wood, and the wood was like so dry. I've never bought wood this dry. Like I could squeeze it with my fingers, 2x4s, and literally crack it. It was so dry. And I had one end bust on me, and it's the one that's always in the camera. Here, I'll show you. This one right here. It's always in the camera. Okay, so it's not Salter Racing shelves. Thank God. Oh, by the way, don't forget, this is my new shirts. That's the back of it. Super cool. Okay, here we go. So what are we talking about bearing crush? Well, basically, guys, right here, let's say this is your cap. Oops, drew that wrong. This would be your cap. Let me real quick fix this, because this way you know exactly what it is we're talking about. So this would be your inside bore housing of the cap. And I gotta fix all this real quick here. Okay. This would be your bolt and alright. Now that's a little better anyways. So this is the block. Let me make sure you guys can see that. Yeah. I'll get it a little bit closer. There we go. So let's pretend that that is the main cap here, and inside of this is your bearing. So I'm going to draw the bearing in red. Okay, so that's your cap side of the bearing. Here's your block side of the bearing. Okay. Now, how do you know if you have enough bearing crush? Okay, well, first of all, if the bearing is made correctly, then the crush is automatic. Where does it get its crush from? It gets its crush from the internal diameter. Okay? Now, remember, I'm talking about stacking bearings here. We're not talking about just putting a bearing in a block and torquing it down and checking your clearance. To check your clearance, you would simply take a dial bore gauge, you would take a micrometer, and measure your crankshaft. Okay, so let's say the crank diameter is 20000, okay? That's the actual shaft diameter, the actual shaft. I would then take my dial bore gauge and set it to 2 inches, 0000. I would then torque down my cap with the bearing in it and measure from here to here, and whatever the difference is would be my bearing clearance, okay? However, we are talking about stacking bearings. So, to stack a bearing, I look in the book. The book says this particular block, this particular year model, the inside diameter of the housing bore is what the block should be with the cap torqued down. All right? Just for example, let's say that the block should be, and I'm just making up numbers because I don't know what it actually should be on this illustration, but let's just say the block should be 200, okay? Y'all see that? Because these markers are failing as usual. There we go. The block ID, the housing bore of the block should be 200. All right, so if I'm going to be stacking bearings, okay, then the reason I'm stacking a bearing is because my block is a large main and my crank must be a smaller main. So I'm now having to double up bearings to get the clearance, okay? So what I need to happen is I need from my inside, my first set of bearings, we'll call this bearing number 1, to when I torque with the bearing in the block torqued down, I need this diameter to be that number. So from here to here, with the bearing in it, I need it to be what the book says the ID should be for the small journal crank. You follow me? Because what I'm doing is taking a set of bearings and turning this block into a small main block. So the bearing installed must be the nominal size for a small main block, small main journal. The problem I'm having is I was getting stuff like 2 inches, 195, or whatever the number was, right? So when you go and put in the actual bearings that go to the small main crank, and let's see, just make it. So let's say this is our bearing that's actually going to be making contact with the crankshaft. When you go to put that in and torque all this down, sorry, I'm in a hurry. It's terrible. Terrible. I torque it down, my clearance comes out pretty good. I think my clearance was like 2.0034 is what it was. Which, this engine is over 8,000 RPM, so that clearance is absolutely fine. That's 0.03 clearance I have from a crank journal. But the problem was the ID with the red bearing installed was much larger. I think I told you backwards a while ago. So if we take the bearings out, it's actually making contact with the crank, and we're turning the large main block into a small main block by using multiple bearings, okay? We know that with all this torque down, from bearing to bearing in the block, I need it to be 2,200 according to the book. According to the housing board diameter, nominal is 2,200. And I would be getting, I told you backwards, but I'd be getting like 2,203 to 2,205. And the problem is, what is that? Well, that's way too big. I'm not going to have any crush. I'm not going to squeeze right here when you tighten the bearing down. That's what bearing crush is those ends of the bearing right here touching each other and literally driving that bearing into the cap and into the block. That's what drives that bearing together. Okay, so I think this is going to help you understand here. So not only do I need the crush, right? The crush is when these two halves meet. How much pressure are they applying on this and applying down? They push each other into the block, okay? If you don't have any crush, basically the bearings will just barely touch, and this thing can spin in the block or in the rod. And the other thing is, when you're checking it with a dial bore gauge or bearing clearance, or plastic gauge for that matter, you can use plastic gauge, you should have the exact same clearance all the way across the bearing. It shouldn't be loose here and tight here, or vice versa. It should be the same clearance from end to end. That's very, very important. So this is a standard bearing, okay? And what I wound up having to do was get bearings that are oversized and then boring them. So we had to set them in the jig, and then they rebored the oversized bearing to where it's closer to that. Because if you use a standard bearing, it's way too big. And the problem is when I put the other bearing in here, because these halves are too big, they don't allow the other bearing to have any crush. You see, these bearings can have crush. The ones that are shrinking the block for me, they have crush. Oh, that's fine. Why? Why is that fine? Because the cap to block is perfect size. So when I put these halves in, the crush is perfectly. But the ID of this bearing is too large to make the other bearings squeeze together. So we have to get oversized bearings, have them punched out only a couple 3/1000ths to get the crush we need for the other set of bearings. So I hope that makes sense. It's been a nightmare, but I finally got it. So I hope that made sense to you. Give you a little better understanding of why these housing bores are so critical. It all starts with the foundation, y'all. If you don't have the block line honed correctly, then when you put your set of bearings in there, you're not going to have, not only is your bearing clearance probably going to be wrong, but it's probably not going to be true all the way across, and you're not going to have the right crush. You may have way too much crush or not enough crush. That's why you cannot only go by bearing to crank clearance. You have to know what is your housing bore diameter, because the housing bore diameter is what locks all this in place. So I got my block perfect. That way I know when I put my first set of bearings in, that crush was correct. But now the bore diameter of my new bearings have to be perfect, or the other set of bearings will not have the proper crush. So I hope that makes sense. You got double trouble. And if a standard set of bearings won't work, then you have to make them. So now you have to get bearings that are like for a 10 undersized crank or something, and bore that bearing out and true it up. Put it in there, put the new bearings in, and recheck it. We need with both sets of bearings in this block, I needed that right there. You get the idea. So, quite a fight. You know what resolves every bit of this? Is get the right block. I mean, right? Why are we doing this? Find a small main block. Problem solved. And I'll be honest with you, I am the first person to say that. But sometimes it just is what it is, and it's all you got. So that's why you get paid the big bucks, right? There you go. Well, guys, anyways, I hope you enjoyed spending this small amount of time with me today. I'm going to get back to work, and hope you have a good, safe weekend. Take care. Oh, don't forget, buy a shirt. salterracing.itemorder.com. Hats are on there too. We have our new and old shirts. I think officially today or tomorrow, all we have to do is show up to the racetrack and start the race. And we have the other championship won in Oklahoma. So I'm really happy with those guys. Really proud of them. Knocking it down, yo. Knocking it down. Okay. I'm going to go. I'll see you.